Welcome back, everybody. We are joined by Senator the Honourable Murray Watt, who will be sitting in for this session. And we have the Australian National Audit Office, and I welcome Ms Carolee McLeish, Auditor General, and other officers of the Australian National Audit Office. Would you care to make an opening statement?
I do have an opening statement, thank you, Chair.
Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So, since the December Senate estimates hearing, the ANAO has progressed its work to support transparency, accountability and performance in the Australian government sector and released 2 end-of-year reports that summarise results and key themes in our audits across the public sector for the 2024-25 financial year. First, our report on the outcomes of the 2024-25 financial statements audits was tabled on the 18th of December 25, covering the results of the audits of the Australian Government's Consolidated Financial Statements, or CFS, and 243 Australian government entities. Overall, financial statement preparation processes are functioning effectively, but areas for improvement remain. Across the 244 audits, the ANAO issued 242 unmodified or clean audit opinions and 2 modified audit opinions for the Royal Australian Mint and the Department of the House of Representatives. Timeliness in preparation of the financial statements improved compared with 2023-24. We observed fewer differences between the entities and the audit's work, and more of those differences were self-adjusted by the auditees. And we also observed a decrease in overall audit findings compared with the prior year. While those observations are positive, there are also areas for concern. The number of legislative breaches increased, with 21 breaches reported, up from 15 last year. Weaknesses in IT controls remain a persistent theme across audits. 45% of all audit findings related to the IT control environment. Addressing these fundamentals is essential in an environment where entities increasingly rely on technology, including artificial intelligence. Our report on the outcomes of the 2024-25 performance statements audits was tabled on the 5th of February, covering audits of the 21 entities that collectively account for more than 85% of government revenue and expenditure. Performance statements complement entity financial statements by providing information and insights on what's achieved with Commonwealth resources. The ANAO has observed substantial improvements in the quality of reporting since the commencement of the audit program, both in the scope of what's being reported and in the clarity, consistency and usefulness of the performance information presented in annual performance statements. 15 of the audited entities received an unmodified audit conclusion and 6 received a modified conclusion. And despite the increase in entities audited, the total number of audited findings remained roughly constant at 65 compared to 66 last year, and there are also fewer significant findings. Maturity in entity performance reporting systems is growing, and that's supported by our audit program. While entities are improving compliance with the reporting requirements under the PGPA rule, more focus is needed to ensure performance statements provide an appropriate and a meaningful presentation of what's been achieved with public resources. We see a particular need for a greater focus on measures of efficiency, on measures of outcomes and impact, on adopting more consistent measures of like functions across entities, such as consistency in measures of regulatory performance or claims processing, and also on reporting on cross-entity initiatives. Our report outlines a number of opportunities for improvement for finance as a policy owner, for entities, and also for the ANAO to consider as performance statement auditing continues to develop. Since July, 18 performance audits have been tabled in the Parliament alongside the 2024-25 Defence Major Projects Report and Performance Audits Outcomes Report. Our performance audit program remains on track to deliver on our target between 38 and 42 performance audits this financial year. Target was revised down from last year's target of 48 audits, which the Parliament has recommended because of resource constraints. We're now in the process of preparing our audit work program for 2026-27 and future years. I intend to achieve broad coverage across areas of public administration, maintain a strong focus on integrity in public administration, and further increase our focus on value for money and efficiency in government activity and on the effective use and management of digital technologies. We will begin consulting on the proposed program in late February, and as always and as required, we will have regard to the priorities of the Parliament through the JCPAA. We look forward to input to the program from the Parliament, the sector and the public before publishing our audit program in July. Thank you, and we look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. We'll go to Senator Sharma.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Dr. Levesh, and your comments. Just if I could pick up on one item in your opening statement, you mentioned that the number of legislative breaches had increased from 15 to 21. Is there any particular reason or pattern in that increase that concerns you, or that would explain that rise?
It is a concern to see the increase in the number of breaches, as you say, from 15 last year up to 21. We had 7 significant legislative breaches, and the remaining non-significant breaches primarily related to non-compliance with determinations by the Remuneration Tribunal and other non-compliance with legislation or subordinate legislation. The significant breaches included breaches of Section 83 of the Constitution on payments made without appropriate appropriations, as well as some significant breaches that were specific to the individual portfolios. Our end-of-year report lists out each of the agencies with the breach and an explanation for that breach, and we can provide more detail if you'd like.
Could I ask on notice if you could just provide more detail about those 7 significant legislative breaches? I believe one of them was something we canvassed at estimates last time, which I believe was a payment authorised by finance in breach of Section 83, or lacking proper authorisation. It was about $1 billion or $2 billion from recollection. Was that covered in your... That would have been one of the legislative breaches? Sorry, I'm not being providing much detail here.
We were aware of the breach in the Treasury portfolio that we discussed in the previous Senate estimates hearing.
And that's one of the 7 significant legislative...
That is not one of the 7. We have reported other Section 83 breaches, but we do not always report a Section 83 breach if there's an element of judgment that's involved, if the entity has addressed the breach and disclosed it themselves. We certainly communicated with Treasury about that breach and raised an observation in our closing letter to the Treasury, so it was part of the audit process, but it is not one of the 7 significant ones that is mentioned.
So that didn't qualify as a significant legislative breach. Can you just remind me of the sum of money involved? It was about $1 to $2 billion from memory, but you might not have that detail there.
It was several $1 billion, I think, 2.3.
2.3
I'll just check.
Okay, and it was... Sorry, Miss Jago, is it?
Sorry, Carla Jago, Group Executive Director, Financial Statement Audit Services Group. Yes, I was just confirming the $2.3 billion. So
$2.3 billion, and that was spent without authorisation under Section 83 of the Constitution. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
So if that doesn't qualify as a significant breach, what does then? I mean, I would have thought that would have been the headline element out of these, but could you give me 1 or 2 examples of what of those 7 significant legislative breaches that you've covered?
Maybe I'll start. There was we list on table 3.3 of our end-of-year report on the financial statements from this last year, audits from this last year. One of them was another Section 83 breach of the Constitution related to healthcare payments in the Department of Health, Disability and Ageing. And that was also a sum of a few $1 billion. Do you have that number, Carla?
Sorry, I just had my hand on it.
2.
The Department of Health was $2.2 billion.
Okay. And why did that one, for instance, qualify as being a significant legislative breach, but the one by Treasury did not?
So in the health scenario, they still need to do some work to actually address the issues, and so we pulled together a number of these legislative breaches. They identified in their financial statements a number of different pieces of legislation that they thought they'd breached and breached Section 83, and so we pulled those together into a single finding. In the Treasury circumstance, they had taken action to address the process deficiencies that had caused the breach.
Okay. All right, I'll move on. If we could if I could get that information on notice, I mean, you can just refer me to the right part of your report. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with it, but I'm happy to look at it in more detail. I just had two other questions. One, you recently did a report on the management of official residences, which I think is from November 2025.
That's correct, yes.
And there was one recommendation I noticed from your report, which was recommendation number 3, that the Office of the Official Secretary to the Governor-General strengthen controls to ensure gifts retained by the office are appropriately registered, and public reporting on gifts and benefits involves the disclosure of the gift giver. And I noticed that recommendation has only been partially agreed by the Official Secretary to the Governor-General. Would you mind just explaining to me what were the concerns that motivated that recommendation?
Yes, I'll just check we've got the appropriate person to provide further detail.
Peter Lane, Group Executive Director, Performance Audit Services Group. I'll just check, Senator, if the response from the office actually articulates the reason for that partial agreement. Just bear with me.
Yep, of course.
So, 3.3. Just one moment.
In our report, we provide the response from the Office of the Official Secretary to recommendation 3. It's paragraph 3.19. And they have responded that it's not practicable that all gifts retained by the officer to be recorded in the asset register as portable and attractive items, and raise concerns about administrative burden and that it could make future valuations of the office assets more complex in nature. They also mentioned that gifts and benefits will continue to be regularly reported on the office's websites. And note that details of the gift giver were shown on the most recent report and will be included going forward. As a general principle, when we audit compliance with gifts and benefits, we expect to see a high level of transparency and detail on gifts, and so have a high standard that we assess against.
But so the reason for the recommendation was that you believe the current or the previous practice relating to the registration of gifts and public reporting on gifts and benefits was not adequate?
We believe that it can be improved, and that's why we made the recommendation. In particular, public reporting on gifts and benefits, disclosing the gift giver is good practice, not to just disclose a gift, but who provided the gift, and having a comprehensive register that, in this case, includes portable and attractive items. Giving further detail on the types of gifts it improves disclosure, improves transparency, and supports integrity.
Senator, I can probably just add a couple of points just where we've gone into a bit more detail to support that recommendation in the audit report. In the audit, we do note that none of the gifted assets retained by the office were recorded in their fixed asset register or the register for portable and attractive items, and further, the public registers for 24-25 did not disclose the giver. So there were a couple of factors that led to that recommendation.
So did you say none of the gifts retained by the office were recorded in the register?
That's correct.
Is there a
during the period we examined? Yeah.
Is there a threshold there that they only need to be or it's recommended they only be recorded if they're above a certain monetary value?
I'm not sure there is a threshold. I think we would expect that any gifts or benefits offered would be disclosed, as well as the whether or not those were accepted or not, and also the giver of the gift or benefit as well. But as we noted in the audit report, there were gaps in both of those aspects.
Okay. I might just follow up with a few questions I noticed on that one, but in the interest of time, I'll just one or two final questions. Is that all right, Senator Grogan? Or
Yep.
Senator Roberts, have you got questions?
He's next, yeah.
Okay, all right, I'll be quick. Just turning to the report on the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations, the ANAO recently did. I believe that in your Chapter 3 findings, you observe that the department has not set any targets for rates of completion for mandatory training modules.
Senator, is this the travel audit you're referring to? So which audit report?
I believe it's DUA's approach to the implementation of the Australian Government Sector Ethical Framework.
Oh,
right.
Is that that's a different one, isn't it?
yeah. Senator, sorry, do you mind repeating that question now that I know which report?
Yeah, I believe one of your findings was that the department, DUA, I'll use the acronym, has not set any targets for rates of completion for mandatory training modules to ensure, for instance, the staff are aware of their obligations under the APS values, the Code of Conduct, the PGPA Act, etc. I think it was recommendations or findings 102 and 104, I believe.
Yeah, sorry, Senators. So what was the point that you were hoping to clarify?
So I guess it was the finding that there are no targets being set for rates of completion, or they're not collecting the data, or they're collecting the data but not meeting the targets, or what was this? If you could just expand a little on what the finding of non-compliance was.
So I might need to provide some of that detail on notice. We certainly did in that audit report, in the key messages that we compiled on the audit, note that the training modules, or that any training modules of any department should have target rates of completion to hold staff to account. I'd have to come back to you with detail on the particular finding for this audit. I don't have that detail to hand.
Okay. And then just lastly, I believe that same audit also resulted in a moderate finding because of a control deficiency that a known legislative compliance matter regarding potential validity issues under the Social Security Administration Act was not documented or captured through the Management Assurance Certificate process. Is that correct? I'm reading that right?
Again, Senator, I may need to come back to you on notice with some detail on that particular recommendation. Certainly if we found during the audit that there was not appropriate documentation, that would be something that we would ordinarily call out, but I might need to come back to you with the details about the specific matter.
Okay, if you could, and I might put some further questions on notice. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for appearing tonight. Have a good evening. The most recent audit report conducted by ANAO of Coal LSL, long service leave, flagged higher risk related to both valuation of investments and the valuation of provision for reimbursements. What's the real meaning of these two findings of risk as regards the effective operations of and the integrity of the scheme? Risks of what and of whom?
I'll ask Carla Jagger to answer that.
So that would be in relation to our annual financial statement audit for coal long service leave. So that is setting out where we see the main risk areas. So often when there's valuations of assets and liabilities, that's of higher risk in an audit because more assumptions and judgments are involved. And in coal long service leave's case, they are the two riskier items in their financial statements. We have completed that audit for the 24-25 year and they received an unmodified auditor's report.
Sorry, what was that?
We've completed the audit for 2024-25 and they received an unmodified audit report.
That means you accepted it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. What would be the fallout if these risks crystallised?
From a financial reporting perspective, it may be that we would conclude that it's not a true and fair representation of the liabilities that are actually owed to others or assets held. And if that was the case and it wasn't corrected, that may lead to what we would call a modified auditor's report. That's the financial reporting aspect. In terms of a more financial management aspect of it, if you don't understand what liabilities you actually have, it's very difficult to plan for how you're actually going to meet those liabilities.
Thank you. The funds arrive in the accounts of the scheme from compulsory levies upon the relevant employers. The funds held by the fund are now in excess of $2 billion. Who gets the excess income generated from the scheme after leave entitlements are paid out? And I don't know if are you aware that there's a significant proportion of casuals now in the coal workforce?
No, I'm not, Senator.
So a lot of casuals, they don't like the way they're treated. They get in and get out before the 8 years. So effectively their employer pays for their contributions, but then they leave the contributions behind and don't get it because they leave before 8 years entitlement. So what happens to that money, do you know?
I think that's actually a question best directed to coal long service leave.
Emmett J. in the Federal Court in 1998 had emphasised there was a lack of control of the corporation by the government. He's not talking about today's Labor government or the last term Liberal government. He's talking about government and a lack of accountability to the government. Now, I know before I arrived in the Senate in 2016, Coal LSL, I was told, had never appeared at Senate estimates. Never. And yet we saw some startling irregularities. And that led to, eventually when they were proven, that led to a review by the LNP, which in my opinion was a pretty soft review. But I would agree with Emmett about the lack of control of the corporation. What change in governance, if any, has occurred within Coal LSL since 1998?
That's quite a long period of time, Senator. I don't know that I could answer that today. And it's probably a question more for coal long service leave as to how their governance arrangements changed.
Your assessment, your audit was just to do with the financial reports?
Correct. We were auditing their financial statements.
Not the company, not
yes,
the entity?
Correct, not the entity.
Because we've got serious concerns about the board composition and many other governance factors. Given the fund was originally set up as a stopgap measure to cover an estimated shortfall of funds to cover long service leaves claims, can your office comment on what purpose is satisfied for the fund to continue generating millions of dollars per year after the original purpose was met a quarter of a century ago?
That's not something that was part of our financial statement audit, no. We were just looking at the financial statements.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Oh.
Like me, short and sweet.
Very short and very sweet. I'd like to thank you all for coming and encourage you to have a lovely evening.
Thank you, and you.
And I'll ask for the Office of National Intelligence to make their way to the table. Please just come directly to the table. Ms. Cathy Godman, Director General, and other officers of the Office of National Intelligence. Ms Goodman, would you care to make an opening statement?
I would. Thank you very much.
Go right ahead.
Thanks, Senator. I'd like to start by acknowledging the privilege and the responsibility of being appointed as Director General of National Intelligence. The National Intelligence community works daily to protect and enhance Australia's security, our prosperity and our sovereignty. And it's an honour to work with such a dedicated cohort of intelligence professionals. Their work is often unseen, but its impact on Australia's national security and the well-being of our nation is profound. In early December, my predecessor updated this committee on Australia's strategic environment, noting that the Indo-Pacific is now the epicentre of global systemic rivalry. The guardrails separating competition from confrontation and conflict are weakening, and crises are overlapping and intersecting, bringing threats onshore faster. This summary reflected the considered view of the Office of National Intelligence. Those core judgments still stand even as we see strategic competition intensifying, warning times shortening, complex risks manifesting in new ways, and we see the international environment becoming more characterised by uncertainty and by disorder. Events of the last 2 months here and internationally have starkly illuminated these trends. This was tragically seen with the Bondi Beach terrorist attack in mid-December, which saw 15 innocent people killed. I would like to pay tribute to the teams from across the national intelligence community and our law enforcement colleagues for their tireless efforts in responding to and investigating this terrible attack on our nation. Beyond Australia, we see friction continuing to build in the international system, including through volatility in the Middle East, Russia's war on Ukraine, tensions in the South China Sea, and pressure around Taiwan. Surprise and rapid change are now more common as the rules-based order comes under much greater strain, increasing the risk of further shocks and of discontinuities. And as great power competition pushes more deeply into economic security, supply chains and critical technology, these domains are becoming routine threats of contest. We also see increasing interstate rivalry, both encouraging a greater focus on military power and affecting efforts to forge multilateral solutions, including on climate change and health. Malign state behaviour, often involving collusion with non-state actors, also continues to manifest in espionage, interference, sabotage and political influence operations. These pressures cumulatively test not only international norms but social cohesion, economic well-being and democratic resilience. In this context, the work of the Office of National Intelligence and the wider national intelligence community will remain critical to supporting government decision-making, our national security and Australia's prosperity. Thank you, Senators, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you. We'll go to Senator Collins.
Thank you so much, Chair. And congratulations, Director General, on your appointment. I want to thank you and your organisation for everything that you do to keep us safe. I am very familiar with the work that you do through my previous work before being here in the Parliament, and I'm very appreciative, and I know how hard you all work and the long hours that you do to provide those assessments to government, so thank you so much and congratulations. I just had a quick question on your appointment first, and we have the press release that announced your appointment on October 16. Mm-hmm. And then you commenced, I think, officially on the 19th of December. Is that when you started work?
That's when I commenced officially, but it's also when I was emerging from surgery for a hip replacement.
Oh, gosh.
So,
it's another fun summer for you.
I'm now walking more strongly and took a little medical leave and then started beginning of last week.
Okay, well... my brother just had a hip replacement too, so I understand what you've been through.
Thank you.
And you will be feeling better very soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Director General, are you the expert that would have been advising the PM on whether or not to hold the Royal Commission into the Bondi attack?
No, Senator. The announcement of the Royal Commission predated the end of my medical leave and starting in the Office of National Intelligence.
Okay. Is that something that the Office of National Intelligence would have done, though? Is that part of the advice that you would give to the government?
I don't think there's a role for ONI there.
Okay. So was there any advice given on the Royal Commission, or perhaps have you been preparing to appear before the Royal Commission? Do you think that's something that you will be required to do?
That's up to the Royal Commission entirely. What we have been doing, like I think a number of other organisations across this town and more broadly, is we've received communication from the Royal Commission in a start-up sense. We've already responded to their request to produce certain information and documentation. That's an ongoing process, and we're going through that at the moment. We are determined to provide whatever support is required for.
Okay, so you are providing materials and personnel for the Royal Commission?
We are responding to requests from the Royal Commission to produce information, and we have provided a couple of staff members to help support the operations of the Royal Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Which is run out, the key department, of course, is the Attorney General's Department, which is the authority to lead on these things.
Naturally.
Thanks, Senator.
Does ONI consider the attack at Bondi Beach to be a terrorist attack by radical Islamic extremists? Is that your assessment, or the officer's assessment?
The assessment is not ours to make, but that assessment has been made, yes.
Thank you. And more generally, thinking beyond the attack, what is ONI's assessment about the level of radical Islamist extremism in Australia as it stands today?
I won't go into the detail of assessment, Senator, but clearly, I can certainly say that Islamic extremism and Islamic extremist terrorism is absolutely not a thing of the past. We're seeing the persistence of that kind of motivated terrorism endure and morph and change. We're seeing that in just about every country, certainly across the West, and Australia really ain't immune to it.
Mm. How do you see it to be morphing and changing? What does that look like?
Well, I think there have been a number of events and a certain amount of progress being made against certain Islamic extremist organisations. And so you see a cycle of different motivations, different leadership, periods of atomisation, I guess, of some of the extremist thinking, as you did when the great strides were made against the Islamic State. So these are the sort of things that our analysts and analysts across the Australian intelligence community, the very good people at ASIO and elsewhere, are very much following to make sure that we're able to provide the best advice on threat levels and the nature and the shape of the threat to the Australian government and community.
So you said that it's enduring and it's morphing and it's changing. Would your assessment be that it's also growing as a problem?
You're talking about Islamic extremism?
Here in Australia,
As I said, I don't think describing it in sort of quantitative terms in that way really makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
It depends what we're comparing it to, what point of time we're comparing it to. But its persistence is remarkable. its threat is undeniable and it remains a very close focus of many colleagues across the national intelligence community.
So would you say that, you know, of your analyst group on this particular issue, would you say that that's grown in size, the average staffing level has grown in size and able to be able to monitor this problem? Have you increased the numbers of people?
I'll defer to others if they would like to speak about staffing levels. We don't generally go into detail about the disposition across different targets of our resourcing, so there's
just
only
in terms of,
not a lot I can tell you on that, I'm afraid.
Whether the average staffing level has increased in terms of looking at this particular issue.
Certainly our average staffing levels have increased very substantially across the last several years, but I'm not going to go into details about their disposition and what they're focusing on.
Okay. Senator, if I might, Nina Davidson, Deputy Director General Intelligence. I guess just to add to what the Director General has said in describing the terrorism threat, I'd say writ large, as well as the threat from Islamist terrorism as being a persistent one, and we, ONI, look at that from a global perspective with an eye to how that then may translate to the Australian context. As the Director General has said, we don't get into sort of detail about how our resourcing allocation shifts, but just with that persistent and enduring threat, our focus has been persistent with it.
Just specifically, would you be able to say whether the religiously motivated team has increased in the last,
Senator,
since the peak ISIS
I
days?
don't mean to sound unhelpful, but it is just not our practice in these forums to start to give splits in terms of how we spread our effort.
That's totally fine. I guess, from my perspective, I'm just trying to understand whether your office has seen the threat level increase over the past 5 years, and whether the focus of the institution has really been focused on that for the past 5 years, and it's mirroring, I guess, the growth of the issue. So, can you just, I guess, give us a sense as to whether the threat today is greater than, let's say, 5 years ago?
As I said, Senator, earlier, I think it's changing. So it's really hard. You're trying to use a sort of a quantitative measure. Is it greater than? Which is not really an easy way to describe what is a persistent but changing threat. I would refer you to comments, quite extensive comments made on the record by the Director General of ASIO on the question of threat levels and describing the nature of the threats when it comes to protecting Australia and Australians here and abroad.
So, in terms of that, what is the sort of public-facing assessment that you're giving at the moment in terms of the advice that you give to government about the threat level? So, what is it that you can?
That's
share?
really an ASIO matter.
All right, that's fine. Are you aware of any interagency groups or other bodies between Australian agencies and overseas counterparts that are specialising on the problem of radical Islamic extremism? I understand that Yes.
There are very extensive interactions, formal and informal, that different agencies of the national intelligence community pursue and undertake with partners offshore. There's the obvious structures that support the very intimate sharing and discussions that happen amongst the Five Eyes. But they are not the only structures or the only conversations that we and other agencies are having. Quite clearly, the conversations that we have with countries like Indonesia, with other countries in Southeast Asia, are very relevant, and they're building. And I would say with a great deal of confidence that every one of the agencies, the main agencies that make up the national intelligence community have really been developing and growing, the links they have and the range of links and the forums for collaboration, cooperation and exchange that are established internationally, just to give much more fidelity to the work that we do to try to help keep Australians safe onshore and offshore. So rest assured there is a lot of engagement, a lot of collaboration when it comes to assessments and analysis, and the range of that is growing and expanding across the NIC.
Thank you. And that would include warnings from overseas partners as well, not just information, but that would include warnings.
I think you're going again. I think your question's really about threat levels again, so it's not really something for us to answer, for me to answer. The lead agency best able to talk to you about assessments and threat levels and what goes into those would certainly be ASIO.
Okay. Perhaps you can answer this one, but what would be your assessment of how different threat actors are intersecting with one another at the moment here in Australia? I'm thinking especially about the overlap between organised crime and terrorism. Is there anything you can share about this overlap here in Australia?
Again, that's much more a matter, I'm sorry, Senator, for ASIO, and I think there are elements of that question that Australian Federal Police and others are very much focused on.
Okay. How many, this comes back to a quantum question, so I think you probably might not be... All right, let's put it this way. Would you say that the religiously motivated violent extremist group is the largest threat group in Australia, or would it be the ideologically motivated group, extremist group?
Again, that's an ASIO if you're talking about threat levels in Australia. And onshore groups, I think, really, I'm going to have to refer you to.
But you would be doing assessments on those, though? Well, maybe not here in Australia, but let's say, globally. Would you say that the religiously motivated extremist problem is more pertinent or more of a problem than the ideologically motivated?
I think I would say that the problem globally of Islamic extremist terrorism remains right up the top of the list when it comes to global extremist action and terrorism threats.
Thank you. So was the office specifically aware of the potential danger posed by either of this is going back to Bondi? Was ONI aware of the danger posed by these two terrorists? There's been reporting of one of the Bondi shooters was at some point known to ASIO. I understand that that's ASIO, but were they known to ONI as well?
Senator, it wouldn't be appropriate to comment on the attack as investigations are ongoing. Any further questions on the investigation, really, I think you need to address them to Australian Federal Police, to AFP or to ASIO as those investigations continue.
Okay. So my next question relates to the Bondi terror attack, but it's more sort of a broad reflection on, I guess, the gaps in our laws and processes. Do you think, was the shooter's ability to access firearms, do you think that was a failure of the intelligence system as it stands? That
when it comes to judgments and questions about domestic security, I'm sorry, Senator, it's not for me to provide any further information for you.
Okay, but
I think the operation of the Royal Commission now, including the work that Dennis Richardson is doing, the operation of police and other investigations are really going to be the locus of inquiry when it comes to understanding better what motivated individuals and what any connections might be.
Yep, understood. Am I right to understand that you're coordinator of intelligence? Is that correct? Is that
correct? Under the ONI Act of 2018, which I happen to have a copy of in my bag. I tend to carry it around with me these days.
I sometimes carry the Constitution.
That's fantastic.
I do too.
That's fantastic. There is a role for Director General ONI, Director General National Intelligence, to play, which is a sort of a coordinating and leading role across what they call the NIC, the National Intelligence community. Of course, each of the agencies that make up the NIC have their own authorities, in many cases their own legislation, and in some cases their different ministers that they report through. So the onus really is on all of us, and with ONI trying to play a leading role to bring us together, to make us more than the sum of our parts, not to direct or interrupt the work that we're doing, but work together on things like priorities, on questions of budget, on capability, including when it comes to sort of emerging areas of capability where we all need to put our heads together and work out what, on balance, is best for the protection and promotion of Australia's interests and those of the Australian people.
Yeah.
So the Act is quite clear both on the role of ONI and DG ONI in that leadership role, but also it's very clear on what authority DG&I does not have in relation to other agencies.
Yep.
It feels like a very, if I can be a bit colloquial, at the beginning, Senator, of my term, as I go around town, as I meet formally in my current role other agency heads, it feels to me that the vibe is very positive, that a lot of work has been done in an accelerating way since 2018 to bring together and to maximise the sort of collaboration and the collaborative effort that happens across the community.
Yeah. So do you think, though, that there is a gap between, the issuing of firearms licensing and that information and, trying to combat this or stay on top of warnings about people with religious extreme views? As somebody who coordinates the counter-terrorism and intelligence community, as you explained, do you think that there should be more coordination in terms of that? Because obviously, that was part of the problem with Bondi, is that information get passed through.
As I said, Senator, I'm just not going to go there. I'm not going to go into speculating on what a particular incident might say in terms of the mechanics of collaboration and information sharing and other things across the system. I think the government has established a number of strands of inquiry now that will look in a very thoroughgoing way at the events at Bondi and attendant issues, including social cohesion and the structure of agencies meant to protect us.
I would make the point, Senator, that this was one of the issues that was addressed by the gun laws passed by this Parliament, that one of the things that was achieved through those laws was the ability, requirement, whatever is the correct word, for intelligence information to be considered in the issuing of a gun licence. And you will remember who voted for that legislation and who did not.
There was an awful lot of other unnecessary stuff in that legislation.
Well, I would disagree, but I understand that's your position.
Yes. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Minister. Okay, so just a follow-up question on all of that. Do you think there's room for your agency to better share information with other intelligence agencies and, beyond, forgetting the issue of Bondi? I understand that's under investigation, but do you think there's room for improvement with that intelligence sharing?
Well, I think collaboration, interaction and sharing lies at the heart of the sort of ONI project, and it's one of the reasons that ONI was established. I think there's a premium not just in Australia but internationally these days on making sure that the different elements of systems such as ours, such as the National Intelligence System community in Australia's case, are working together, sharing information where that makes sense, taking account of the sensitivities, including sort of operational level sensitivities. We've all got our own jobs to do.
Yep.
We're determined to work together as closely as we possibly can, and to make sure that we operate as a community.
Okay, so there was the Richardson Review in 2019, and I believe that called for enhancing information sharing between agencies. It was recommendation 135. Has that been delivered for ONI yet?
That lies at the core of the work that we do. 2019 was very much startup phase. I think for the latest phase of how I'd describe sort of community building across the NIC, the National Intelligence community. It's absolutely essential part of my role, of Nina's role, of Duncan's role, and across the NIC.
Okay. How much longer do I have?
You're the only one asking questions, to the best of my knowledge, Senator Collins, so we'll just
Keep going, okay. I'd like to talk about Trump administration now.
Sorry, the
Please.
Trump administration?
Yes. I'm just wondering about your ONI's assessment of the significance of the Trump administration's focus on the Western Hemisphere and its revival of the so-called Monroe Doctrine. Do you think there, in the assessment of ONI, do you think that there are any implications for Australia and our region?
Senator, I'm going to disappoint you yet again and repeat what Director Generals of ONI and ONA have said many times in the past, and that is that we don't, in this setting, go into anything about the content of our assessments.
Okay. I think we can move on. That's
Thank
okay.
you.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate your time, and
Thank you, Senator.
all the very best with your recovery, and congratulations again.
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you. We'll let you go. Well done getting through your first hit out here, and well done to the Minister for getting through his first hit out in this session.
I feel mighty relieved.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Good luck with your recovery, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
I will just say, Senator Collins, if it's any use to you, ASIO is appearing tomorrow night, as are the AFP, one at 6:45 and the other at 8:15 p.m.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
See you there.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. We'll let you all go. You may go. Senator Watt?
Office of Governor General
Requires no minister at the table.
go. Okay, that makes sense.
So you may leave.
Okay, and then Senator Farrell
We'll come
is in
after
from
that.
there.
That's correct.
Excellent.
So you are
Thank
free
you.
to go.
It has been my pleasure.
Sorry we couldn't provide you with anything more.
You earned your salary tonight.
So I will ask the Office of the Official Secretary to the Governor General to approach the table. So I would like to welcome Mr Jared Martin, the Official Secretary, and other officers of the Office of the Official Secretary to the Governor-General. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. It's a lovely Monday night. Mr Martin, do you have an opening statement?
I do, Chair. Thank you. So it's Jared Martin, Official Secretary to the Governor-General. I'd just like to briefly update the committee about the Office of the Official Secretary to the Governor-General since the last hearing. The Office continues to support the Governor-General in performing her duties, having now undertaken over 950 official engagements since she was sworn in on the 1st of July 2024. The Governor-General attended a range of events in response to the tragic attack at Bondi Beach on the 14th of December and hosted leaders and members of Sydney's Jewish community at Admiralty House on the 16th of December 2025. The Council for the Order of Australia and the Australian Bravery Decorations Council met out of session on the 23rd of December to commence consideration of matters relating to the response to the events. Following a letter from the Prime Minister to the Governor-General on the 24th of December, the Governor-General agreed to the creation of a special honours list in response to the tragedy. Both those councils will meet again in the near future to undertake further work on these matters. Since December, the Office has supported the Governor-General to preside over 5 Executive Council meetings. This included a special meeting on the 9th of January where the Governor-General issued the letters patent establishing the Royal Commission on Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion. The Australia Day 2026 Honours List was released at the end of January, recognising 949 Australians, and investiture ceremonies for these recipients will be held later in the year. And finally, as has been previously discussed before this committee, this office is working with the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet to find a resolution to requests to remove certain individuals who remain on the It's an Honour database where adverse information or findings have come to light. It's intended that this matter be discussed by the Council of the Order of Australia when it meets later in February. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll go to Senator Sharma.
Thanks. Good evening, Mr Martin. Mr Barnes, nice to see you both. I just had a follow-up question from that I was pursuing with the Australian National Audit Office, who did a report which I think was published in November, from recollection. And there was one particular recommendation that I was just keen to understand your position on, recommendation number 3, which is the controls around gifts. Now, from what I understand, that was the only ANAO recommendation with which you did not agree entirely. Would you mind just explaining, so I can understand a little better the reasoning? This is the recommendation for public reporting on gifts and benefits, disclosing the gift giver and controls to ensure the gifts retained by the office are appropriately registered.
I can, Senator. I think that recommendation number 3 is the one that we partially agreed to. So I should start by saying we worked very closely with the ANAO on that audit, and we always appreciate their work, and they always provide us with some good recommendations which we tend to pick up. To put context around this one, so in 2024 we introduced a new gifts and benefits register and system intended to put us consistent or better with the best in the public sector in terms of transparency. That involves quarterly publication, so we record every gift that's received. We publish quarterly, everything received over $100. The addition that we made after the ANAO report was to include the details of the source of the gift as well, so that was a helpful suggestion which we included. Where we partially agreed was, so we have that register in place, it's published quarterly. The ANAO recommendation related to the financial asset register. So the financial asset register records everything over $5,000 in value. So we only partially agreed to this one because we were cautious about the idea of recording on the asset register every single gifting, because we receive a lot of small items. Which we do record and we do publish, but we were cautious about publishing them on or including them on our financial asset register, which is normally for items of over $5,000 in value only, because we thought it wouldn't make a material difference to include small items, but it would carry quite a significant resource burden to update both registers regularly. So the bottom line is we do record, we do publish all this information consistently, and we did pick up the recommendation to include the source of the gifts as provided, as suggested by the ANO. It's only in relation to the financial asset register where we do include everything over $5,000 value. Very rare that there'll be a gift over $5,000 value, but if we did receive one, we would certainly include that on the financial asset register.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it makes sense not to include something on an asset register and have it subject to an asset management plan if the value's low. What's the basis of the $100 threshold? I'm not saying it's too low or too high. I'm just wondering how you.
I think it's consistent with a number of government departments, so we selected it on that basis.
Okay. And then I was just looking at your gift disclosure log for last Q3 and Q4 of 2025. So when the proposed action is agency to retain use, what does that mean in practice? Does that mean that the Office of the Secretary, the establishment, if you like, of Admiralty House and Yarralumla will use them?
Yes, Senator. So for some of these low-value ornamental items, we'll retain those. They might be displayed. They might in particular be brought out when receiving diplomatic or other official visits from the country where the gift was provided from, for example. So it's used for those sorts of purposes.
Okay. And then when it's recipient to retain personally, so I'm looking here, for instance, at the Mongolian chess set gifted by the President of Mongolia in September. When it says recipient to retain personally, what does that mean?
So the other element that we brought into place in 2024, Senator, was to match the parliamentary obligation and the obligation on ministers to for any gifts over the thresholds. So we match the parliamentary thresholds for gifts received from government sources and from private sources. And where there are values over those thresholds, the same rules apply to the Governor-General in that if she wishes to retain them personally, she needs to pay the difference between the threshold and the value of the gift in order to retain it personally. Okay,
so for that chess set, the Governor-General needs to pay...
Yes, Senator.
About $1,000 or something?
Yep.
Right, okay. And is that the same with the gifts to the Prime Minister, you'd know from your previous role?
Yes, it is.
It is, yeah, okay. And if it's a large gift, sizable gift above the threshold and the recipient doesn't wish to retain it personally, but the agency has no ability to retain it, so say for instance the chess set, the Mongolian chess set, the Governor-General didn't wish to retain it, I presume you can't really use it in the ordinary course of business. What happens to it then?
Well, look, we might, Senator, we might retain it and display it in the same way. And then we seek to, at certain points, usually towards the end of a Governor-General's term, we might seek to provide those items as Commonwealth records, Commonwealth assets to a collecting agency like the National Archives.
Okay. Is there any other, so I've just seen recipient to retain personally, agency to retain use. Is there any other common categorisation or action?
No, there isn't, unless there's... occasionally there are items that are...
thrown out.
Yeah, basically, of no value or foodstuffs that are perishable. Yeah, okay. That's the word I was searching for. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Roberts.
Thanks, Mr. Martin.
Thank you. I should be quick, Chair.
Excellent, because we are running late.
Thank you for appearing tonight. Australia's Governor-General is supposed to be neutral as to taking political positions. First question is, how is it that the Governor-General can be a patron of a political activist group, Equality Australia, that actively supports irreversible gender treatments for children?
So, Senator, the Governor-General is patron of around 209 organisations at this point. The patronage is a purely honorary role. The Governor-General has no role in making decisions around policies or positions taken by the individual patronages. It's purely an honorary position.
Thank you for your answer and for being brief. Isn't it that she lends her credibility or the office's credibility to the Equality Australia? Just by being a patron?
Yes, Senator. Broadly speaking, the role of patronage is to amplify the message of the organisation and to elevate it to some extent in their broad goals. But again, the Governor-General does not, the patronage does not provide support for any position or support advocacy of any particular organisation. There are many patronages that seek to raise issues of all sorts of different types, and while the Governor-General supports through the patronage supports the general good work of the organisations, she doesn't support or advocate any particular position taken by those patronages.
I was going to ask the Minister this, but I'll ask you instead. Can't see your name tag.
Oh, sorry, Senator.
I wasn't here when you were introduced. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Why did Assistant Charities Minister Mr. Andrew Lee intervene to give Equality Australia charity status when on 3 occasions the Administrative Appeal Tribunal and 2 federal court hearings had held that Equality Australia was not established for a benevolent purpose and should not be known?
I'm going to stop you there. That's not a question appropriately directed to Mr. Martin or this particular office. You would have to go back
I would like to have asked the Minister.
Well, no minister appears at this session.
I can see that.
Because it's not the appropriate session.
Thought I'd try anyway.
It's just the Office of the Governor-General.
So I have difficulty understanding patronage of an organisation that was not established for a benevolent purpose and should not be entitled to DGR, deductible gift recipient status. Is the Governor-General aware of this? Or are you aware of it? Before
yes,
tonight?
I am, Senator. So the issues relating to DGR status were not in place when the patronage was accepted. And again, it's an honorary position that has no role in those sorts of matters.
Now that it is in place, do you have any change?
Well, we regularly consider and review patronages, Senator. These matters are always under review.
Thank you. DGR, deductible gift recipient status, allows donors to claim tax deductions for the donations. So Equality Australia was given such a massive favour by the
Again, Senator Roberts, this question is not appropriately directed at these witnesses.
Well, I would like to ask a minister, but okay.
As I've said, this is not the appropriate session. You would need to, we can help you find the appropriate session for you to ask those questions.
I might put them on notice to the minister.
Sure.
Yeah. My 4th and 5th questions are not appropriate. They're for the minister.
Thanks, Senator.
Thank you. We'll go to Senator Shoebridge.
Thanks, Chair. Good to see you again, Mr. Martin. We've previously had a discussion about the removal of honours, and I think you said that there were ongoing discussions with the PMNC in that regard. Can you give an update on where those are at?
Yes, Senator, I can. So, yes, they are ongoing. We and as I indicated in my opening statement, we are hoping to put some of those discussions before the Council of the Order of Australia later this month for further discussion.
All right. Are you able to give us any insight as to what issues have been addressed in those discussions? Some further insight into that?
So, Senator, a couple of things I'd say. So I know you're familiar with the statement that Council put out in relation to the way that the Order of Australia is a living order and the difficulties that presents in then being able to consult with anyone who has passed away, obviously, and provide them with natural justice in the circumstances where issues are raised about their order, their award. However, we also acknowledge that there is ongoing trauma and these are significant issues for people who remain and who have concerns about people whose names are listed on that database. And so, as I've said to you before, Senator, that's something that we take seriously, and we'd like to take steps to see how that can be properly addressed.
And that's going to be that issue, with the benefit now of where PM&C have the engagement with PMC, is going to be brought before the council at its next meeting.
Yes, Senator.
When's that meeting?
It's later in February, Senator.
All right. Thanks for that update, Mr. Martin. I note that the office has made efforts following the TOM review to put in policies about staff policies in particular and update the policies. And I want to acknowledge the efforts that have been made to update the policies. But could I ask about the extent to which those policies are going to provide any relief for staff who have concerns about how they were treated before those policies came into effect, and who may have been, whose treatment features in the TOM review, for example?
Yes, Senator. Well, look, the purpose of some of the changes we've made in is to ensure there are proper mechanisms in place for reporting of any issues that arise in the workplace, and to allow them to be dealt with in an orderly fashion. So there is no time limit on when any problems might have occurred for them to be reported. The important thing is that we now have mechanisms in place for them to be reported and dealt with.
Right, and that those policies don't have that only operate prospectively. They include if people have issues about workplace stress, harassment and bullying that predate the policies?
Yes, Senator, I think that's fair to say, particularly in terms of the reporting of them.
All right. Could I, in terms of reporting, I think you said in answer to question or notice, my numbers say 884, double check. And again, I want to thank you for answering the questions thoroughly on notice, that there were 3 workplace grievances or complaints lodged in 2024-25. Were those, well, how many, if any of those, related to workplace stress, harassment and bullying?
So we'll just check for you, Senator, but we think 2 of those were directly raising issues of bullying or harassment.
Would those workplace grievances or complaints, would they be able to reference the current policy to help address their complaints? Is that how the policy works?
On the face of it, Senator, I see no reason why not.
Okay.
It's certainly, the policies are not intended to be exclusive. They're not designed to exclude anyone who wants to raise something. In fact, quite the opposite.
All right. The TOM review made, I think, 22 recommendations.
That's right, Senator.
Is that right? And I think almost half of those related to inconsistency in performance management and human resource policies. That would be right? About 10 of them?
Yes, Senator, that's about right.
So far, I can only see the office responding to recommendations 3, 4, 5 and 6. Is my understanding correct or incorrect?
So we've implemented responses to 13 of the, or 15 now. Am I reading that right?
Completed or partially.
Yeah, so 15 have been completed or at least partially completed. And that includes...
Do you want to give the ones that are completed first? Sorry, Mr. Martin.
Yep. So I've got listed as complete recommendations 3A, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 partially, 11, 14, 15 partially, 17 complete, 18 complete, 19 partially, 21 is also complete.
All right. Could I ask you then about, do those recommendations address the fact that staff employed under the Governor-General's Act aren't eligible for the review of actions scheme through the Merit Protection Commissioner that the APS has? Do they provide some alternate remedy in those circumstances?
So none of the recommendations specifically go to that matter, Senator, as far as I'm aware. None of the recommendations go specifically to that matter, that review process. The thrust of a number of the recommendations was to ensure that this office operate more consistently with public service standards overall, and we've taken as many steps as we can to try and achieve that. I'm not sure I can speak authoritatively on the specific review mechanism you're talking about, but I would be happy to take that on notice.
Thanks, Mr. Martin. Could I ask you, the results of the APS census and the proportion of staff that engaged with the APS census, do you have any observations about that? When you reviewed it and had a look at the APS census, what were your takeaways?
Well, look, the first thing was, Senator, that's the first time that this agency has participated in the APS census, and obviously we will continue to do so from here on in. So in some way, we were looking at these as a baseline, which we hope to improve on as we go through and continue to participate in the census. It did certainly raise some areas of concern, and we are preparing an action plan to address those, which is the very reason for participating in the census is to unearth these issues.
Can I ask, what's the content of that action plan? Because there were elements. I don't need to go through it in detail because we're short on time. There are elements in that would have troubled me if I was in charge of the agency. Can I ask you what the action plan is?
Yep. So out of that first census that we've completed, we've identified 3 action areas. So the first one was in relation to fraud and corruption, where we are increasing our training, updating the fraud and corruption plan, raising it consistently at branch meetings. The second focus area was in relation to bullying and harassment, where again we're focusing on training and updating our policies, making sure that there are mechanisms for reporting, as we've discussed. The third area was broadly communications with staff from across the agency, where we're looking to use new staff forums, in particular an updated internal communications framework and intranet, and using other mechanisms like messaging on our screensavers for our IT network to ensure that we raise awareness of all the new mechanisms that are in place.
All right. Mr. Martin, I want to credit some of the changes that have been put in place and meaningful efforts that have been made to, I think, from my understanding, effectively modernise the workplace.
Yes, Senator.
I think you in many ways, you're going through a task of pulling a 20th century workplace into the 21st century, and I think it's a significant task. I mean, you don't have to agree with my characterisation, but you might want to respond to it.
Well, Senator, as I mentioned, we're certainly seeking to ensure that we are consistent with APS and public sector best practice wherever we can.
All right. The initial response I think you gave when I was asking about staff that had been directed away from the workplace pending investigations, I think your initial response was 3 staff, and there was then, I think, corrected to 2 staff.
That's right.
Is there some distinction being about staff directed away from the workplace and staff directed away from the workplace pending investigations? Were there other staff directed away from the workplace for other reasons?
No, I don't think so, Senator. I think it was a straight-out error on my part.
All right. Do any staff remain in that situation, directed away from the workplace pending investigations?
No, not at present, Senator.
The two staff who were in that situation when we last spoke, what has happened to their matters? Have they returned to work? Have they?
Yeah, Mr. Barnes will help you with that.
Senator, Mr. Jeff Barnes, I'm Deputy Official Secretary. Both of those staff who were directed away resigned prior to the conclusion of the investigation processes.
What happens to the investigation process then once they resign? Does it just end?
We were unable to conclude the investigation process once they'd resigned because we obviously can't put the findings to them and offer them opportunity to respond.
What do you do about the concerns that might, inevitably in these kinds of matters, concerns are raised about management, concerns are raised about the responses that have happened to complaints and grievances? How do you, if you can't complete the investigation in the context of an HR matter because they've left, how does the organisation address the concerns and respond to the concerns, particularly if they're about things like bullying and harassment?
So, Senator, while you can't complete the individual investigation, I think there are still lessons to be learned in those exercises from the investigations as they've proceeded to a certain point. We spend quite a bit of time reviewing those matters and seeing what lessons we can learn out of that.
All right. And has that been undertaken in relation to both these matters? That although the investigation hasn't completed, you've looked at the underlying issues, you've looked at that, and you've got some kind of record about how you've incorporated that into the changes or alterations or?
Anything that came out of those investigation processes, Senator, was considered in terms of opportunities for improvement. And in concluding the process, we followed our policies and guidelines which reflect the wider APS policy and guidelines in terms of also letting complainants know.
Right. And I know my final point. Yep, thanks. And I know there were some questions earlier about Equality Australia. Was that in the context of the Governor-General being a patron for Equality Australia?
Yes, Senator, that's right.
I just want the record to note that from my perspective, and I know many people who support Equality Australia, it's entirely appropriate for the Governor-General to be a patron of an organisation like Equality Australia and as one of a very diverse group of organisations that the Governor-General is a patron of I just want the record to reflect that the questions, maybe the opinion or consideration of one senator, but they most definitely don't reflect my opinion, and I know many Australians who support Equality Australia.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. We do...
Just one last thing. I just wanted to acknowledge and thank Miss Sharon Prendergast. Is she here today? She's leaving shortly.
Thank you, Senator, for reminding me.
And I'm sure other senators would like to as well.
Ms Prendergast has worked at the Office of the Official Secretary for, I think, 19 years, and she will be retiring, I think, before the next estimate, so this will be her last. So she's been the steward of the Australian Honours System.
That's what I thought.
So it's been in place for 50 years, and Sharon has been responsible for looking after it for 19 of those years, so that's an incredibly significant achievement which we would like to recognise, and thank you for noting it, Senator.
Thank you so much for your service.
We'd very much like to recognise your service.
Thank you so much for all the work you've done over the years and assisting us with our nominations and so forth. So it is much appreciated, and you're not allowed to retire. So
we wish you all the very best in your retirement, and thank you for your service.
I've never sat at this table and had such a lovely thing.
If we'd known, we would have got you to come and sit up earlier.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you so much. I would now call on the Department of Finance. Welcome to Senator the Honourable Don Farrell, Special Minister of State, and also to Mr Matt Yiannopoulos, the Secretary, and other officers of the Department of Finance. Minister, would you care to make an opening statement?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Please go ahead.
In December, the Prime Minister sought advice from the Independent Parliamentary Expenses Authority on parliamentary's travel expenses. Following receipt and consideration of that advice, the Minister for Finance and I wrote to the Independent Remuneration Tribunal, the body that's responsible for determining parliamentary remuneration and related expenses. The Remuneration Tribunal considered the matters put to them and responded to the Government in January. This response was published as a statement available publicly on the Tribunal's website. The Government accepted these changes in principle and requested the Department of Finance to draft the necessary changes to the Parliamentary Business Resources Regulations. The Department of Finance is working closely with the Independent Parliamentary Expenses Authority on drafting and implementation consideration. It's my intention to implement any required changes with the operational date of the 1st of July 2026, allowing for the appropriate drafting and consultation across Parliament.
Thank you very much. Mr Yiannopoulos, would you like to make an opening statement? Yes, if you could.
No opening statement. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. We'll go to Senator McGrath.
And while you're tabling documents, Minister, are you able to table the staffing?
The gift, the magic gift.
Table, please.
There it is. Some copies.
Oh, this is service.
Oh, check it out.
Minister, you're too kind. If only there were more staff of the opposition in this table, that I'd really love you.
No, I don't think that's what you'll discover.
No, sadly not.
But don't forget the personalised service.
I will never forget that. I'll take it to my grave.
Thank you.
Are you able to table at all the letter you referred to before to the REM Tribunal from your... You can take it on notice.
No, we'll do that.
From you and the Finance Minister.
Yep.
Thank you.
We'll do that.
Cool. Excellent. Now, Minister, in the last MIFO, I note the government is providing $7.5 million to the department to conduct a review of the parliamentary ecosystem, and the person who calls it a parliamentary ecosystem should be appropriately counselled in terms of misuse of the English language, and for specialist expertise to advise on improved security arrangements at electorate, ministerial and Commonwealth parliamentary offices. So when we talk about the parliamentary ecosystem, is that Parliament House?
And the electorate offices.
Well, there's two things. There's the parliamentary ecosystem, and for specialist expertise to advise on improved security arrangements at electorate, ministerial and Commonwealth parliamentary offices. So is the security aspect one element of it, and the ecosystem... Well, I don't even know. Can you define what ecosystem is?
Ecosystem is the system in the eco.
Oh my God! So, it's going to be, please, come on. Please, you can't make this up. Someone help him, please.
What has been too long a day? There's a whole lot of things that occur in the Parliament House, in the electorate offices, that haven't been reviewed for years and years and years. And the idea is to try and synthesise the way in which it all operates, to make it safer for members of Parliament, for their staff, but modernise it, bring it into the modern age. So everything that has to do with the sort of operation of this place, an electorate office, try and bring it up to speed the way it should be.
I don't know if I understand. Like,
what part of it don't you understand?
well, you've got, so there's 7.5 million, as I understand it, there's two elements to this. There's specialist expertise to advise on the security arrangements, which I think I can understand that aspect of it. I just don't understand by, I'm not being a negative Nelly here, but I'm just trying to understand, what do you mean by, are there terms of reference for this review of the parliamentary ecosystem? I don't know if the officials at the table can assist with you, Minister. They might be able to.
My understanding is the terms of reference haven't been drafted yet, but it is our intention to consult with my counterparts on these issues, so that we're bringing the rest of the Parliament with us on this journey.
In terms of, sorry, Minister.
That will include yourself.
Okay. Well,
and you'll have a better understanding then when you've read the
parliamentary ecosystem.
We'll get you a definition of ecosystem.
And we can change the name if it's worrying you. We can change the name.
I think some of the journalists believe that there's an ecosystem in this building. Some of the voters perhaps too. In terms of the $7.5 million, is it split equally between the two projects?
No, well, that's the total. I can't say that exactly it'll be equally distributed. Do you?
Senator, Simon Newnham, Deputy Secretary at the Department. At this stage, there's not a defined split amongst the 7.5 million. And Senator, I'm happy to sort of give a couple of more facts that go to a couple of your questions. We would look at the ecosystem as the sort of legislative framework that enables Parliament to discharge their duties. So it includes the parliamentary business resources, travel expenses, employment of staff, services and support. And so we're very mindful the terms of reference are being worked on, and they're still to be determined and, as the Minister has said, to be consulted on. But it's worth remembering that there are a number of reviews that were scheduled of this legislative framework upcoming, actually 4 in this term of Parliament. So they were on Set the Standard, as well as statutory reviews of the PWSS Act, the MOPS Act and the PBR Act. So we would envisage that there's a logic to including those in a sort of combined review that's being looked at. And I'd also note, Senator, it's a dense combination of entities that are involved in servicing parliamentarians and their staff, and that's been added to since 2016-17 when some of those significant reforms came in. So we'd see that as part of the need for that more wholesome, wholesale look at the totality of that legislative framework and the entities that operate within it, noting those 4 reviews I mentioned a moment ago that were already scheduled to come forward.
I know we're in an initial stage, we don't have terms of reference, but in terms of the $7.5 million, is that will that be contracted out to third parties? Is there a view as to how that money will be allocated? Because you do mention, I think there's mentioned there'll be specialist expertise in terms of that aspect for the security arrangements. So is there a view there?
Yeah, so I will certainly ask colleagues to come in specifically on the security side, but what I would say in the broad, and very much acknowledging those comments I made earlier, all the caveats I made about this being the early stages and government still working through what the terms of reference will look like, but equally with a view to appointing reviewers to sit over the top of this ecosystem review, independent, external to Parliament and government, to be serviced by the department, as you would often see in those types of arrangements. There may be multiple reviewers that are there, and they may well have backgrounds that are appropriate for this type of review with experience in these types of issues. So we'd see that level of expertise there. Back to your question about security, we'd see security in a couple of ways. It's specifically called out in the funding, as you've mentioned. but you could also imagine it being an important feature of a review of that ecosystem. I know you don't like the term, but let's go with it anyway. A component of that, given the evolving threat environment that we are operating in globally and in Australia. So we'd see it as actually both dedicated work and part of that ecosystem review. I'll just check with colleagues if they wanted to add anything to that.
Senator Shannon Fraser, First Assistant Secretary, Business Enabling Services. Just to add to what Mr Newnham has said, we have an existing function in relation to security and property, and part of that resourcing is to supplement that existing funding to enable some work to be done to accommodate the large amount of work we've got in relation to electorate office relocations and fit-outs, office fit-outs.
In relation to the security arrangements, because it specifies electorate, ministerial and Commonwealth Parliament offices, what about the residences of parliamentarians in terms of, I just know from anecdotal conversations I've had with colleagues in terms of people tend to know where politicians live. That's a good thing, but also it means that there's a heightened security element around that politician's house, especially if they become a high-profile politician.
Yes.
Would that be part of the review?
Senator, at this stage, again noting all the caveats I made earlier, we would see that as potentially a separate body of work, and I'll explain why. The settings that are in place or that need to be made in the future for any parliamentarian in regards to home residence and personal safety is a body of work coordinated by the Home Affairs Department. And it has the Protective Security Coordination Centre, and it makes judgments informed by ASIO, the AFP, State and Territory Police about the particular settings that apply to individuals. Working backwards from those judgments that are made about the threat assessments on individuals, you then have a series of steps that they would take in relation to private residences and close personal protection and vehicles and other layers, if you like, of security. So I'd be reluctant to go into great detail there because it's really a Home Affairs lead. But needless to say, as you would expect, we are heavily involved in aligning ourselves and coordinating with those security agencies because those judgments inform the types of settings we need in electorate offices, and they inform the types of settings we need when we have our Comcar drivers and operations taking into account those settings.
When will the review formally commence? Well, I suppose there's two reviews, but when will both reviews formally commence? Is there a start date?
When you agree to it, Senator, and you're happy with the terms of reference.
Well, I like how it's been deflected straight back to me, but
you asked the question.
Yeah, well, and I'll answer the question. Well, I'm sure, Minister, if you've got time this week, I'm happy to sit down with you to go through the terms of reference.
Unfortunately, unless you're coming to Brussels to negotiate the free trade agreement.
I'm more than happy to help you negotiate a trade agreement in Brussels. It's one of my favourite cities.
We'll do it on Wednesday in Brussels.
Look, I'm more than happy to.
It'll have to be next week.
That's fine, Minister. But there's no formal date as such.
No. So what we're trying to do, there was a whole lot of inquiries that were on the cusp of being started, and rather than do a whole piecemeal exercise, we've tried to put them all together and try and come up with some more consistent approaches to the way in which we do things around here. We're not, we don't think we've got all the answers. We want input from, the opposition, then we'll start the process.
Is there are there reporting milestones?
Well, only the ones that we put into the document.
Okay, so it's to be confirmed, subject to consultation.
Yep. We're not. As I said, we don't think we've got all the answers here. In the past, we have done this in a piecemeal way. In the last time the coalition was in government, we did it. We had an inquiry with, number of inquiries. They were done sort of in a consultative way, and that's the way in which we intend to operate this time.
Senator, on your sense of urgency and progress, I could certainly update you that, of course, having now secured the budget, we're working very closely with the Special Minister of State and his office to try and craft those terms of reference. We're working on the appointment process for reviewers. We've actually created a task force inside the department that will service and support the review. We've actually need to do a bit of a restructure as well as associated with that. And we will, seek to then really support those reviewers in what we expect to be pretty comprehensive consultations across the system. So I appreciate there's a fair bit more work to do before it kicks off, but there are a number of lines of effort ongoing between us and the Special Minister of State's office to progress it.
And I understand part of the review will include somebody that you are comfortable with.
So the review of security arrangements, that would specifically exclude Parliament House, because it's Commonwealth parliamentary officers, ministerial officers and electoral officers, so it wouldn't include this building?
So we've talked about the review of the parliamentary ecosystem. On the security side, as I mentioned earlier, it's to supplement an existing function within the department. That function works as part of it works with a number of other agencies, including DPS, which looks after security within Parliament House, and Home Affairs, which looks after security more broadly. And so we look at it more from the securing parliamentarians and where they are. So by the nature of business, looking at the security aspects of parliamentarians would incorporate Parliament House to a certain extent. Okay. So, yeah.
Are there many... I know it's I understand the vision of the government is to do a health check, I suppose, is the language I would use.
Good way of describing it, Senator.
In terms of security arrangements at those workplaces, do you get many complaints in about the security or lack of security or concerns about security?
Senator, it's not, I don't know if I'd necessarily characterise it as complaints, but what I would say is over some years there has been an uptick in protest activity near electorate offices. There's also been a number of incidents of damage created to parliamentarians' electorate offices. We know the AFP have cited some 63% increase in the number of online threats to parliamentarians in the last 4 years, for example. So putting all of that together and noting this is an evolving threat environment, noting too the lines of effort that have already occurred to date, including to upgrade the baseline security settings for all electorate officers, we do think it's absolutely appropriate to not only continue that work but to bolster that to try and meet head-on some of those emerging challenges. And I would note, Senator, whilst I can't go into great detail about it, it's also informed by, as I said earlier, that parliamentary security system that operates, led by Home Affairs, but with inputs from multiple agencies. So I'd say that operates as a contextual input to why we think this work is very important.
Will the interim or final reports be made public?
If that's what's agreed between ourselves, then yes, it will. I would expect it would be made public. Would be my expectation. No reason why we wouldn't make it public.
Okay. If I might just go on to other areas, Chair, is that okay? Or do you want to...
Do you know roughly how long you've got, Senator McGrath? I only say that because we are running behind, and I'm just trying to work out how we're making our way to 11 p.m.
Well, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 5 post-it notes here.
Post-it notes are quite small.
In terms of areas of questions, and the Minister is renowned for being brisk with his answers. I was going to say brisk with his answers. So
far away.
I probably 20 minutes at most. Yeah. So what does that look for?
It's a look of adoration.
Never heard that before from a Labor senator directed towards me.
Well, I thought there was a lot of love in the room.
There is. Is my okay to continue, Chair?
You are.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Cheers.
Please go ahead. Obviously, if you stumble across a question that you think would look really good on notice, please feel free.
That's so. I've got a lot of those coming anyway. So my office is sending me some very fulsome messages at the moment. Can I ask about? This is following on from question on notice F199. If that assists everybody. We ready to go? Or?
We might be, Senator. What was the subject matter? Sorry, just
it's to do with the termination of staff following the 2025 election.
Right.
And I put some questions on notice in relation to, I think it was, you used the word surge.
Yes.
In terms of dealing with that particular issue.
Yes.
So I've got some questions you may need to take these ones on notice. Following on from that question on notice F199, after the 2025 federal election, how many staff received severance benefits due to the loss of employment?
Senator, I'm going to just check with my colleague, Mr McWhirter, whether we can answer that tonight. I don't know if we need the question repeated.
So there'll be both EO and personal, including staff members losing their employment due to their members' retirement, loss of election, or loss of portfolio. So,
Senator, we've actually tabled answers to those questions, so we can read them out, or
if you could, please, thank you. Yeah.
All right, so that's I think that was part 1 and 2 of your question. So, in terms of so your question wasn't about the preparation so much as
was it how many staff receive benefits due to their loss of employment?
That's a good question.
Oh,
There was a series of questions.
I see. Sorry, Senator, I might have confused my answer to you there.
We do.
If you want to take that on notice, if that will assist.
Let's see if we can. F199, that one there.
Yeah, but I think this is the question.
Oh, I see. Okay. Senator, how about this? So 591 MOPSAC staff employees received a severance payment after the 2025 election. The total for that was $22,809,087.57 in those severance payments to the 591. 227 of the 591 have been re-employed under the Act. The average length of break in service was 15 days.
What was that last?
The average length of break in service. Sorry, I don't know you didn't ask that orally. That was in your question. It was 15 calendar days for the break in service where they were re-employed.
Thank you. So once they're terminated, at what stage in the process does a staff member or the former staff member receive their severance benefit?
There's usually an 8-week deferral period, Senator, that's in place. Now, there can be adjustments made to that deferral period. That does require the accountable authority, in case the Minister, to agree to that. I'm going to just throw to Mr McWhirter, though, to clarify if there's anything further we can add.
Yes, Senator. Scott McWhirter, Acting Assistant Secretary, Business Enabling Services. There are some other factors that go into determining when an actual payment can be made. So, for example, we would need to undertake a full audit of the individual's personnel file to make sure that there aren't any outstanding matters like leave or prior service which has not yet been calculated, for example. So they are some of the variables in terms of what we have to administer. So there is no set time frame. In terms of the deferral period, it is 8 weeks. The individual can choose to even shorten that period of deferral.
Do you have the number of staff following the 2025 election? How many staff members wish to terminate prior to the final date of employment? Do you have that?
In other words, prior to the end of the deferral period?
Yeah.
I think we would have that.
On notice.
Whether we've got that tonight, I'm just not sure.
Yeah.
I think we'll take that on notice, Senator.
And the other one to take on, if possible, is the average amount of time from when a staff member requested early termination to when they were formally terminated. Because what the issue is, I think there was a delay following the 2025 election.
Yes.
Now, in that F1, Q09, F199, one of your answers, it's in paragraph 3, or answer 3. The current pay system configuration does not enable the cessation and commencement of an employee within the same pay cycle.
Yep.
A solution to remediate this issue has been developed. The department is seeking to implement the solution by approximately December 2025. So, you know, the question's coming is, did the department meet this deadline?
No. Unfortunately, we did not. I think we got a little bit ambitious with that deadline. We have made progress, though, Senator, as you would hope, and at this stage we think we're going to have that solution in place by April. Yeah, it's just taken us a little bit longer to get that in place.
Okay, well...
To offer a little bit more, Senator, it was when we started to undertake user testing on the solution with the vendor that it became... we became aware of a challenge in the system to actually deliver the solution. So it highlights and it's reflective of how complex that day break issue is for us in our employment construct, and that it is unique.
Well, I think we have estimates coming up in May, so I hope you have a positive answer to this.
So do we, Senator.
Can I move on to another area, which is following the 2024-2027 EBA, and one of the changes in that was a new same-day travel entitlement. And obviously I'm asking this on behalf of staff in this building as their unofficial shop steward. When will the same-day travel entitlement be introduced?
Senator, thank you. You're absolutely spot on. That was one of the commitments made as part of the outcomes to the agreement. And what it provides for under clause 61.7 is the Commonwealth may introduce a guideline that provides allowances for same-day travel. We are working to settle that via a policy or guideline. We are seeking to consult with the employee consultative group and, of course, having to work with IPIA and related stakeholders. We have held a workshop to refine the draft policy implications and the FBT implications. I'm going to call on Mr McWhirter to add to this, but I'd also think, Senator, with the I know we're sometime beyond the finalisation of that requirement. However, the employee consultative group was in abeyance, of course, during the election and took a little bit of time to actually get reconfigured, actually quite late in the year. From memory, it was around November period. So that may well have been a feature of, that's the group we would go to test these types of things with. So I suppose we have that in mind. That hasn't been reconstituted until recently, but I'll throw to Mr McWhirter as well.
Yes, Senator. So in addition to that, we did discuss the same-day travel arrangements and where that work was up to at the November Employee Consultative Group meeting. We anticipate we'll be able to give a further update at the meeting later this month when the ECG meets again. In terms of finalising a policy position, it does somewhat depend on trying to finalise a system solution as part of that broader position.
What do you mean by a system solution?
So to facilitate the solution more fully, so when an individual MOPS employee were to undertake travel on the same day, we are trying to look at a system solution that will enable that to be done through PEMS, and that part is still being worked through.
Senator, we're looking to find a solution that's not onerous to administer for individuals. So, you know, the benefit of the part-day travel allowance, we don't want to be overwhelmed by administrative burden to get your part-day travel allowance. So we just want to make sure that the solution to implement it is practical and automated where we can.
Because I think it has been about 15 months since the commencement of the EBA. So would you have a date, notwithstanding what you just said there in terms of subject to ifs and buts and whens and maybes, when you might get a landing on this?
Senator, we don't have a date as such, but I think what I can say is we feel the sense of urgency. This was a commitment under the outcomes. I would note it was that the Commonwealth may introduce a guideline. I'd also note there's been a body of work occur on it. And the point made earlier is we want to make sure that whatever we land on with the guideline, it's consulted appropriately and that it makes sense from a technology point of view, actually putting it on the expense management system and it working for the users. That might sound simple, but it's super important, of course. The best rule in the world that doesn't work in your automated system isn't going to go too far. And I would also note, Senator, a whole series of other requirements under the enterprise agreement outcomes have been implemented as required along the way. So it hasn't been a sort of set and forget. There's been a whole series of other outcomes from that process that have been implemented. This is outstanding. There's work continuing. I don't have a deadline, but we do feel the sense of urgency on it.
So just to
reassure you, Senator.
Sorry.
That it would be fair to say, obviously, last year, given the election, we were very focused on managing election and staffing arrangements, and that this work was deprioritised. But that post that workload shifting, this work has been reprioritised again. So we are very focused on delivering.
Will there be a mechanism for staff who have incurred costs that would have otherwise been covered by this entitlement since the commencement of the EBA to make claims retrospectively?
Would not be practice to have a retrospective solution.
I'm saying because it is part of the EBA, and notwithstanding the language was used before, so there's an expectation from staff that this would be happening. So staff are incurring costs in terms of their day travel.
Senator, we might take that on notice. What I could say though is, as I've said before, it was a commitment to look at introducing a guideline that allows for that same-day travel allowance. It isn't in place yet, and it was never intended to be in place immediately. It would be unusual, I think, to have a change retrospectively applied for terms and conditions under an arrangement where it's been made in those terms, where it was always envisaged that it would be a future look at that new guideline. We will take it on notice, but I would just point out at the moment it is not yet an allowance that applies, notwithstanding that it was a commitment to pursue that as part of the outcomes to the enterprise agreement.
That'll be good. Thank you. Another question from the in relation to the EBA is, this is to do with the excess Canberra travel leave. So when will the automatic processing of excess Canberra travel leave, which I understand was an element or condition of the same EBA, be introduced?
Okay.
I think I've asked, I refer you to question on notice number 202, because I've asked about this previously.
Yes, Senator. So in relation to excess Canberra travel leave, the solution that we have come up with is still undertaking some user acceptance testing, and we believe that will only take a matter of another fortnight at the most. So we believe that solution is imminent, and we will be able to, once we have that confirmed, we'll be able to then communicate to all MOPS Act employees that automated crediting solution is now available.
Okay.
And we will provide some supplementary detail in terms of any retrospectivity action that we would take as part of that.
Okay. Well, you've said the word imminent, so what date is it today? It's the, thank you, of February. So, but by the end of February, so that's it?
I sincerely hope so, Senator.
Okay, right. Well, I will hold you to that in the nicest possible way.
It's in our interest as well, in terms of administering these things. It's in our interest to get these solutions up and running. It helps my staff in terms of their workloads and manual workarounds and things. So we have a vested interest in progressing this as well. So we will do our best to implement as quickly as possible.
Now, can I just raise an issue about the employment of, by parliamentarians, of relatives? Is that, you can handle that at the table here? So is it my understanding is the MOPS Act prevents parliamentarians from employing their spouses, de facto partners, children, parents, siblings, children of their spouse or de facto partner, their children's spouse, or their de facto partner of the child, or their siblings' spouse or the siblings' de facto partner. Is that correct?
Senator, I don't have that clause in front of me, but it sounds correct on the reading. Yep.
Is it the case that those who fall into that category were effectively, and I'm sorry about the gender-specific language, grandparented, grandfathered, were protected,
right,
when the changes were made? So if one of those falls, a person who fell into that category was employed by a parliamentarian who they're related to, when the changes were made, they could keep their position. Is that correct?
Yes, that's our understanding, Senator. Yes.
Okay. So, what about grandchildren?
If we don't know.
Because there's
grandchildren being grandfathered.
Well, no, there's nothing to do with the grandfathered. But what about the sorry, someone please, better word than grandfathered. They're a protected class. Is probably a better a protected class. Can a parliamentarian employ a grandchild?
I don't think we know the answer to that off the top of our head, Senator. I mean, instinctively, you could see some logic in that being a concern, but we'll take that on notice.
It's just my understanding is that Senator Polly employs her daughter, who is a protected class of employee, but also employs a grandchild. And I'm just, my query is, sure it's not a hereditary passing on of the protected class position, but whether in terms of the MOPS Act, it's quite specific in a way that you can't employ spouses, de factos, siblings and whatever, it would seem strange that you can employ a grandchild.
Senator, I agree with the logic of your question. I have said we'll take that on notice. We wouldn't go into scenarios for that senator or any other senator particularly, but let us take that on notice in relation to the inclusion of grandchildren in that category.
If you could. Minister, do you think this should be a policy decision in terms of amending if someone is allowed to employ their grandchild, whether that class of relative should be added to the prohibited class of relative who can't be employed by a parliamentarian?
I would need a little bit more detail about it, and so I shall look at the issue and come back to you, Senator.
You can take it on notice. That is fine. Thank you. Chair, I'm done. Well, I'm not done. I've got lots of questions to go on notice, but that's my questions for this area, I hope. Check my list.
Thank you very much. We will take a brief break and come back at 10. And between the hours of 10 and 11, we will do our utmost to get through the rest of the agenda. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you. We'll see you again in a minute. Let's get on, shall we? I would like to welcome Mr Jeff Pope, the Electoral Commissioner, and the other officers of the Australian Electoral Commission. Mr Pope, would you like to make an opening statement?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, we'll go directly to questions and we'll go to Senator McGrath.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks, Senator.
Excellent. Can I just talk about the implementation of the changes concerning expenditure and donations that are going to come in from July 1? How are the sort of transitional rules progressing?
Senator, I believe that they're being drafted by the Department of Finance, the Electoral Policy Unit, but I believe that they're progressing quite well.
Are you comfortable as... Sorry, I've got to... You can answer how you wish, obviously, but in terms of the ability of political participants to fully understand the changes that Parliament legislated, are you confident that those participants are able to comply or will be able to comply post 1 July?
Well, Senator, what I would say is, I mean, we've got all shoulders to the wheel on this project. We've got nearly 150 people working on this full time, and it is a significant priority for the agency, as you would imagine. We are sprinting towards implementation on the 1st of July. As I've indicated previously, there is still an element of sentiment from some of the parties and entities that they will be also sprinting and, if not potentially struggling by the 1st of July, but we are doing everything we can to support them with that process.
So the feedback you've received from political parties and entities, that's guided the answer you just gave then in relation to their ability to comply with the changes that will come into effect on the 1st of July?
That's right. I mean, it's hard for me to talk on behalf of entities, and certainly all entities, so I am summarising at a very high level. We are engaging with all of these stakeholders now on a regular basis. That engagement is escalating rapidly, particularly since we're now in 2026 and Parliament has returned. That will escalate even further between now and the 1st of July. But in that engagement, yes, there is that sentiment that there is a lot of work. It's complex, Senator, and I think entities are working their way through that complexity, and some are probably progressing better than others, but there is a broad sentiment that it's going to be a sprint to the start line.
So on your website in the last week, you've published, I think it's 5 two-page fact sheets.
Yes.
When will the AEC be publishing more, and when will you be publishing, I suppose, more with additional detail?
Yeah, we've got some very detailed guides that are towards final draft. So we'll be publishing a lot more over the coming months, but I might hand to the Chief Operating Officer who can provide a bit more detail on some of the planned products. Yeah.
Thank you. Rachel Houghton, Chief Operating Officer. So just to be really clear, we have on our webpage, we really regard it as our single source of truth. So it's not just an opportunity for us to communicate about the various reforms, but it's also an opportunity for people to sign up to our user groups. And that's a very free-flowing conversation. We present on particular topics and people can ask questions in those forums. They can also use the website to ask questions directly to the team, and then when we get the answer to those questions, we publish them on the website. There's the fact sheets that you referred to, and just to be really clear about the topics that we've currently got up, They're quite broad, so we've got disclosure overview, admin assistance funding, federal accounts, donation disclosure notices for donors and then for recipients, annual returns, gift caps, gifts, electoral expenditure and expenditure caps. And as the Commissioner said, from February onwards, we'll be publishing some very detailed guides on a similar range of topics, which will take stakeholders through in quite a bit of detail those elements of the scheme.
So I understand you've been having consultative sessions. You might want to call them something else. How many have you held?
We've had 9 to date, and I think that we have got 5. I'll just find the right section, but we've got 5 further sessions in February. So we've got sessions on registration, user support and guidance, planned for February and March. So registration, user support and guidance, and then funding. So quite a few additional user groups. The other thing that we're really open to is if various entities have questions for us that they don't feel comfortable to raise in those user groups, we're really happy to speak to them on a one-to-one basis. So, and we have done that for a number of political parties.
Does the AEC accept that the political parties are essentially run by volunteers? I can speak in reference to my own one, and yes, there's a small number of professionals who might be in a head office, and for a number of, I suppose, jurisdictions, this is a real change in terms of how elections are run. Do you accept that, and the Commissioner, you mentioned the fast run to the end as such, or a sprint, that there may be compliance issues, not because people don't want to comply, but because they just don't know?
Senator, I think, I think some entities will find the complexity very challenging, if not potentially overwhelming, and we're going to find varying levels of compliance. But my understanding also is that, from a compliance perspective, for the first 6 months of the scheme, we'll be taking an educative and supportive approach rather than a compliance approach. So those entities will have that time to further adjust their systems and their processes, but we'll be doing everything we possibly can to try and support compliance for the first 6 months. I might just say the only footnote to that might be if a by-election occurs.
No, that's a by-election.
So that would be a situation that we'd need to think our way through.
This is a by-election in that 6-month period?
Yes, that's right.
Is there something you're aware of? That's...
Not at all, Senator. Not at all.
Okay. Now, it's been put to me that the AEC has developed a range of personas to help users imagine how the electoral system is going to operate. I didn't fully understand what this person was talking about. Can you take me through what I mean by these personas and what was the cost and things like that?
Absolutely. So in terms of the personas, it's a common design tool to help our stakeholders understand the different circumstances that the system might be designed for and the different processes that people will go through. So the initial personas that we designed were designed based on, within the AEC, our understanding about how different people would use the system and the different requirements of users. And then when we have presented them to the user groups, what we have said is if there are different use cases that you would like us to explore, then we're happy to do that. But I think the use cases, the personas, have been relatively broad, and so people have been able to see their own experience in those personas. But what we do is we use them to test, is that how you would use the system? Do you consider that there would be any other factors that we need to take into account when we're designing the business process or the system. And we've had some really fantastic feedback from the stakeholders in the user groups, which very genuinely does inform our consideration of how we build the system and the processes that we're designing.
What was the cost?
The cost for the personas, I'll have to take the specific on notice. However, my understanding, and one of my colleagues might correct me, is that the staff who develop the personas are actually AEC staff, so they're our ongoing employees.
Okay.
And so the cost would be part of the program cost year to date.
In terms of, Commissioner, you and I have touched upon this when we've had, when you've briefed on a couple of issues. Often politicians were at the front end of dealing with electoral law changes, not just because we have to deal through Parliament, but we have to deal with it in our roles as candidates and so forth. Is it something in terms of the consultative groups, and it might be difficult to put Labor and the coalition in a room together, but whether you could do consultative groups, say for government members and opposition members and crossbenchers as such, just to, so from a political perspective, as politicians, my colleagues can understand what's going on?
Certainly, Senator. I mean, we've already met with most of the major parties to initiate those conversations, and we've made more offers to continue that. Those offers have been made very, very recently. We are happy to meet with parties, entities, associated entities, significant third parties, to the extent that they require, to try and give them as much opportunity to understand and comply with the scheme and to be ready by the 1st of July. I should also add, just so it's not missed or not implied as it should be, but we're also making very good progress on the design of the new system that will support donation disclosures as well. So, and that is on track to be ready by the 1st of July.
And Senator, just to be clear, the costs associated with the design of the personas is staff costs.
Okay. That's good. The Queensland redistribution, is anything you're able to add to that? I know the deadline is...
I look forward to it, Senator.
Yes. You're supposed to tell the truth there. I'm sure you are. No, is any update in terms of where we're at with that? We're still waiting until July, is it? Or?
No, I believe no, there's no real update, Senator. We remain on track. You know, we're waiting for more population data from the ABS, which comes out on a quarterly basis. Then I believe under the legislation, I need to make the declaration based on that population data for the next Parliament, I think on or about the 23rd of July of this year. And that's when it will determine whether Queensland remains at 30 seats or may potentially go to 31.
And if it went to 31?
At the next election, effective from the next election.
Would that be just a straight increase in one?
Yes, it'll be a straight increase in one and take the House of Reps to 151 for the next Parliament.
Unless, of course, Commissioner, the Labor Party delivers on its manifesto commitment to increase the size of Parliament, in which case there'll be... Yes, you're giving a nervous tick there, by the way, Commissioner. So,
if that was to occur, Senator, then obviously we'll, as we always do, we do what Parliament asks us to do to the very best of our ability, and we'll implement that to the very best of our ability, depending on when that is to be implemented for, but we will do our very best.
Okay. Just go back to... In terms of the implementation, going back to the previous line of questioning, in terms of the implementation of the reforms, how many staff do you have working on them?
148 at the moment. It's a very big and complex program.
And if I could add, that's including both APS staff and labour hire.
Okay. That's a lot of staff.
Yeah.
It's a big reform.
It is a big reform, and
biggest reform,
and it's a reform
years.
that was bipartisan.
Yeah.
But I just want to place on the record that most political parties are run by volunteers.
Yes.
And I spend my life going to branch meetings, and I've said this before, where the worst job you can have is to be treasurer of that particular party unit because of the compliance costs, in terms of the compliance stress that is caused on volunteers. Yeah. So I just hope, in terms of the electoral, it's something you understand that as much as you might have 148 people, you're dealing with volunteers out there who this is something they do in their spare time, if they have spare time.
We completely understand that, Senator. It's not lost on us, and we experience that when we undertake our compliance program with parties and entities on an annual basis. We are doing what Parliament has asked us to do by the date at which it's asked us to do it, and we're doing that to our very best of ability. And maybe the only other bit of comfort I can give you, apart from us empathising and understanding the situation of most parties and entities, is that the administered funding is also intended to support parties and entities with the implementation of this scheme. And that is also scheduled to begin in the new financial year.
Can I go to...
Just give you a little timestamp there, Senator McGrath.
Thank you. I don't have that many questions left, actually. So can I go to question on notice number F96, please?
Yes.
Now the question, and maybe I could have worded it better. I was going to go to question 1, and your response was, this appears to be a hypothetical policy question best deliberated by JSCAM and considered by the Department of Finance and by the Department of Finance. And my question was, if a political party pays for a third party to place electoral matter on their social media feed, whether that content should be authorised. That did happen at the last election, and so I suppose my question is, what is your practice in relation to where a political party does pay a third party to place electoral matter on a social media feed? I mean, how do you handle those situations? And how do you go? How will you enforce it? How will you enforce it?
I don't recall that happening at the last election, Senator.
I thought I'm pretty sure I'd raised, I'll check back through my questions. I'm certain I'd raised it previously. But look, I stand to be corrected. But it's something obviously we've got to deal with because it is happening. I think I don't want to be partisan, because I'm just trying to get a policy answer here. I'm pretty sure it happened with the Labor Party did pay influencers to promote the Labor Party. I'm pretty certain about that.
Well, I think we are also... I stand to be corrected if that has escaped my attention. We are also suggesting through our response that this is a policy issue, and therefore JSCAM's a good place to have those policy discussions. I might ask the Chief Legal Officer if he's got further advice.
Andrew Johnson, Chief Legal Officer. I agree with the Commissioner that we're talking about, and I think we have had these discussions in previous estimates about just the changing nature of that communicating electoral matter and the use of third parties, and the challenge it is for us because ultimately we would look at the authorisation requirements and say a disclosure entity such as a political party, they're responsible for providing the authorisation, particularly if it's paid electoral matter, that needs to be authorised as well. When it comes to paying a third party to place something on the third party's social media page, then it becomes that matter of sort of investigating and trying to find that trace back through. What we found at the federal election 2025 was the matters that were referred to us about those third parties or third party social media influencers, as we couldn't find evidence of connections of actual payments to place electoral or paid electoral matter on those influencers' sites.
Senator, you might recall in our JSCM submission that we indicated that the legislation around authorisations does need to be considered by JSCM. In fact, it's a specific terms of reference, and we would really like to support the committee in having those discussions around what changes may need to be made to the authorisation legislation. Once that is done, then we can, with greater certainty, update the complementary determination, which provides that greater level of detail. But I need the legislation discussion to occur first before we update the determination.
Okay. So you need Parliament to make a...
I would be really encouraging JSCM to have a thorough examination of the authorisation legislation as per its terms of reference, and we very much look forward to supporting JSCM through that process and seeing what recommendations it puts before government.
There appear to be a number of, moving on, thank you, there appear to be a number of organisations that you would expect to see as third-party campaigners who didn't lodge annual returns. Has the AEC undertaken any processes or audit to write to organisation that it thinks may have an obligation?
We have a number of ongoing inquiries, Senator, with entities that we've been engaging with and working to determine whether there is a disclosure requirement.
So could you extrapolate that answer to... So would you have a list of organisations that you would expect to lodge a return, or...?
Yeah, so we do our own environmental scanning and analysis, and from that, we get complaints and we get referrals and all sorts of inputs from that process. We are working through a process to determine whether they've got a disclosure requirement.
Okay. So have you written to these organisations formally?
The ones where we believe they have a disclosure requirement, we've started that process. I stand to be corrected. We've started that process.
How many have you written to? It must...
We'll have to take that on notice, Senator.
If you could take that on notice and when the responses are expected. So would you expect any third-party returns to be published late?
I think that happens almost every year, unfortunately. So I do expect that there'll be some late returns lodged, and I expect there probably also may well be some amendments to returns as well.
Are there penalties? I should know this, but are there penalties for failing to submit a third-party or significant third-party return?
Well, I think this is also one of those areas for further discussion at the Joint Standing Committee around the legislation that we need to regulate. My understanding is we can proceed with matters before the court, but as soon as someone lodges a return, albeit late, it's very difficult to prosecute at that point and becomes somewhat nugatory. So it is an area where I think there could be some strengthening.
Okay. On notice, can you provide a list of the third-party organisations you have written to?
Yes.
Thank you. That's my questions, Chair, to the
Excellent.
AEC.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pope. Colleagues, we will let you go.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this evening. And I would ask that the Parliamentary Workplace Support Service come to the table as swiftly as they can make it. Welcome to Ms Leonie Granger, Chief Executive Officer, and other officers of the Parliamentary Workplace Support Service. Ms Gregor, do you have an opening statement that you would like to give?
No, Senator.
Well, we will go straight to questions. Senator McGrath.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Evening, Senator.
What is the status of the Parliamentary Workplace Culture and Performance Survey, and when will the results be published?
Sure. Leonie McGregor, Chief Executive Officer, Parliamentary Workplace Support Service. Thank you, Senator, for the question. The Culture Survey, which is the first culture survey that Parliamentary Workplace Support Service has undertaken, and that's required of us as part of our legislation, was finalised in, I think, January, early January. 16th of January was the closing date. So results are currently being collated. We're expecting that we'll be in a position to be briefing people on those results probably in the next 4 weeks or so, once we've had a chance to look at them. The intention is then that the survey results will be published probably in about March, but that will depend on the presiding officers as to exactly when that occurs, I think.
Okay. How many responses did you receive?
I'll just get Kate to give you the detail here. It was around 1,200. Oh no, we had, was that the total there? We had 1,033 responses in total.
And I realise we've got to wait until you've looked at it, but in terms of, until you've looked at the results properly before you brief people, but are you able to break down in terms of there were 10% parliamentarians or whatever in terms of the breakdown?
We've got a bit of a breakdown. Yeah. These are rough figures, still sort of being finalised, but probably for parliamentarians, around 8% of those responses were from parliamentarians, around 14% from MOPS Act employees, and around 38% from other parliamentary employees, so Department of Parliamentary Services, for example.
Okay. How many surveys have you done?
That's our first one.
That's your first one?
That's the first one.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
In terms of complaints, do you receive many complaints?
We receive many complaints.
So how long this piece of string that question was. So what are your latest figures on complaints in terms of, probably a better way of putting it?
We've probably got a bit of a breakdown.
And are you able to compare them to a corresponding period or the previous period in terms of,
yes,
I know you're new and things like that, still relatively new, but
we do have. I think it's probably on this page. You can answer this one if you like. We're just having a look at these. I don't know that we characterise things just generally by complaint, Senator. We sort of have different categories of, we have many calls that come in. So and we categorise them into functions like counselling and support, HR advice, learning and development, work health and safety. So I guess when you're talking about complaints, it may be that in any of those categories, someone might be ringing with a complaint about something, but equally they may just be asking a question. So in terms of actual specific complaints, we do look at the counselling and support cases in much more detail, so whether people are ringing to report bullying or harassment, for example. We do keep a record of those sorts of things, but it's probably difficult to sort of have a very specific complaints category.
Okay. And this is quite a left field question, and it may not be within your remit, but part of having a safe workplace is for people to feel comfortable and feel healthy.
Right.
Yeah. I don't go to the gym here, so it's not about me, but a number of staff here have expressed concerns about the operating hours of the gym and things like that. Would it be your view that staff having the ability to access a gym where they can undertake physical exercise is important in terms of having a healthy workplace?
I think that having access to that kind of a service definitely is, something that a workplace might consider providing to assist its employees. So from that perspective, I can see that it would be a positive thing. And, I know that in the Set the Standard report, there were various, observations about the kinds of things that would assist people who are working long hours in a place like Parliament House in terms of their mental health, their well-being, etc. And having access to those sorts of facilities was definitely one of the things I believe that was mentioned.
Thank you. I've got further questions, Chair, but I will put them on notice. So
thank you kindly, Senator McGrath.
Thanks, Senator.
Thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate your time and all the work that you are undertaking. I would now ask the Independent Parliamentary Expense Authority to make their way to the table. Welcome, Ms Christina Grant, Chief Executive Officer, and other officers of the Independent Parliamentary Expense Authority. Thank you for joining us. Ms Grant, would you like to make an opening statement?
Thank you, Senator. No.
Okay, we'll go directly to questions. Senator McGrath.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. With regard to the $6 million that was provided in MAEFO to meet its service delivery functions, did you request this additional funding from government? And if so, when did you make the request?
Thank you, Senator. Actually, the funding that came through was a replacement of funding that was previously harvested for benefits associated with the Parliamentary Expense Management System. Those benefits were not realised, and so the funding, which relates to resourcing staffing within the agency, has been returned on an ongoing basis. In previous years, it's been returned a year about. This particular measure just replaces it on an ongoing basis so that we can have some surety in our staffing levels. It's not actually really a change to the budget.
So funding was taken away.
Yes.
So you've got to work with me here. I'm not great with numbers. So funding was taken away, and now it's been given back to you. So one hand took it away, and another hand gave it back.
Yeah, as is common with new measures, usually the costs of new measures need to be found from within existing funding. It was estimated that efficiencies would be gained from the Parliamentary Expense Management System, and those are probably questions best directed to the Department of Finance. But essentially that related to 13 IPIA staff. And I guess over time, those benefits weren't realised to the extent that was hoped, and the base funding for those 13 staff without indexation has been returned to IPIA's budget in an ongoing.
So how many FTEs does IPIA currently have?
Good question. Human resources. So the 62 headcount, excluding the CEO, and a 65 budgeted ASL for the agency.
Is that sufficient at the moment in order for you to satisfy your requirements?
With the existing functions that the agency has and the 13 staff, well, at least the base funding for the 13 staff returned, it allows us to maintain the existing standard without a reduction. If we had lost the funding for the 13 staff, then it would have required a reduction in our service level.
I have some questions here, and you probably won't be able to answer them, but I'm going to put them to you anyway, so you can take them on notice. Can IPIA confirm that the Attorney General, Michelle Rowland, has repaid part of the family travel expenses she claimed for a 2023 trip to Perth after IPIA found portions of that claim were outside the guidelines?
Thank you, Senator. So IPIA, as you know, does not comment publicly on individual cases, including confirming or denying whether we have conducted an audit or an assurance activity or provided advice in relation to a particular parliamentarian, and we extend that courtesy to all parliamentarians. It's a long-standing convention and ensures that parliamentarians will seek advice from IPIA and be able to take that advice with confidence that it will remain confidential. And so while there may have been things in the media, it has always been our stance that we don't comment on those matters publicly.
So without mentioning Ms Rowland, when a member or a minister in this case, when a minister claims that they have official engagements during a trip to, say, Perth, take me through, without maybe referencing that case, but how does IPIA assess whether claimed official duties are sufficient to justify family travel costs?
I guess that's a hypothetical.
Well, I suppose it is a hypothetical, but it's also helping me understand your processes about how. So I suppose it's not hypothetical in a way. It's asking how does IPIA assess whether claimed official duties are sufficient to justify family travel costs? So I suppose it's not hypothetical, it's a factual question.
So specifically in relation to family reunion travel? Yeah. So we will be, so our advice or our education in relation to family reunion travel is that parliamentarians may, if they have family reunion budget available, have their family join them while they are conducting their parliamentary business. So they would need to be travelling for the dominant purpose of their parliamentary business. Their family may join them while they're conducting their parliamentary business in accordance with the regulatory requirements. I guess one thing that we would always educate or suggest caution with is where the family joins
a parliamentarian prior to the parliamentary business commencing, or whether the family travel happens at the cessation of the parliamentary business. And so we're quite careful with our advice. It's always very specific. It takes into account the individual circumstances of the parliamentarian, the parliamentary business that they were undertaking, when their family is arriving, when their family is leaving, and what type of family reunion budget is available for the parliamentarian.
In relation to when you do compliance reviews, do you would it be a policy of EPA to, without identifying, you know, the party or the politician who was in breach as such, would it be a policy of EPA to say that for the financial year 25-26 we did 23 compliance reviews and 7 were found to be in breach? Is that something, I should probably know this, is that something that you would publish?
We do have statistics on our audit and assurance, and I can, for example, say that during the 25-26 financial year to 31 December, IPIA conducted 5,119 post-payment checks covering 739 parliamentarians and staff. We conducted 5 preliminary assessments covering 5 parliamentarians and or staff. We conducted 20 assurance reviews covering 20 parliamentarians or staff, and we completed 1 audit and commenced 1 audit during the period. So yes, there is absolutely a program, and we do report our performance as is required of all public service agencies in our annual report, and we have service level standards that we publish around our audit and assurance activities.
Does EPA consider self-referrals differently from referrals triggered by opposition or media scrutiny?
All assurance matters are undertaken in accordance with our published protocol, and which the name of which is escaping me. What is the name of it? The name of the protocol? Just the protocol. Yeah. So we publish a. I thought there was a bigger name. We publish a fact sheet. We have a protocol published on our website which outlines how we will approach those things, and we may undertake assurance activities for a range of reasons. Some might be identified through media. Some may be part of our risk-based approach. And others may be self-referred or requested by individuals. We're not picky.
That's good. Chair, I'm good. I've got other questions I'll put on notice. So, but no, I'm good. Thank you.
Great. Oh, Senator Sharma. Go right ahead.
It's only a small, but I believe there were some questions on notice asked to IPIA, a couple of which are overdue. I think they're F303 and F304. The questions on notice.
Well, we might need to double check what's happened with them, because my understanding is that we have lodged responses, but maybe something has happened in the process, so we can follow those up.
So it's question on notice number 447.
447.
Asked by Senator Patterson. It's also labelled portfolio question number F304 and question on notice 446.
It's 447. That's not 447.
No, 303 and 304.
Yeah, or it could either be, yeah, I think they seem to have 2 numbering systems, either F303 and F304 or 446 and 447.
Yeah. So we'll just follow up. My understanding is we've responded to them, but maybe they're still within the process. They can't be too far off, Senator.
So you believe you've submitted responses that just hasn't been processed yet?
Yeah, but I do need to double check, so if you don't mind if I take that one on notice.
Do you know what the topic was, Senator Sherman?
Oh yeah, they're concerning travel expenses claimed by the Minister for Sport, Miss Wells, and relating to 2 separate trips. So they were asked on notice on the 12th of December 2025. I don't believe, just checking with the...
We'll chase it up.
Okay, because I don't think there's nothing that's being processed, but if you could please take that on notice.
They're definitely in train. They can't be too far away, but we will chase them.
Okay, any reason the deadline hasn't been met?
I believe my agency has lodged them, but they may be somewhere in the tabling process. I'm just not exactly sure where they're at, so I would not like to tell an untruth. I just need to go and chase them up. I'm happy to do that. There's no reason to not respond to them. And IPIA is usually very timely with our responses, although sometimes these things can be quite complex.
Understood. Thank you. That was all, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
And we will let you go.
Yeah, I will just say we're running education sessions around the country in the coming months, and if you have staff or you are interested in an education session, I strongly encourage you to
Anything
sign on.
particular you're educating on, or just in general?
We are educating on the framework, the whole framework, and so it's a great opportunity to ask questions. Family reunion travel will be covered.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ms Grant, and thank you very much to your colleagues. We do appreciate your time and hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you, Minister. Really appreciate your time, and our thanks to Broadcasting Hansard and the Secretariat for the great job that they also do. Thank you. We'll suspend.